Ladies and gentlemen, for Europe, 2015 was a very tough year. A year with a lot of violence, which began in January with a bloody attack on Charlie Hebdo and on the Jewish supermarket in Paris. 2 weeks ago, the French capital was hit again, this time even harder, if that could be possible, with a gruesome balance of more than 120 deaths. We cannot let these inhuman acts of terror throw us off balance. Today, all who mean well with the world should join hands. We need to cope with the horror together, in our country as well as everywhere else and beyond the borders of the different communities. For the battle is one of we against them. We is anyone who means well, no matter which religious community he or she comes from. And they are the criminals, the terrorists. That's just how it is. I'm very happy and honored to be able to join you during this Hanoukka celebration. Hanoukka is the festival of lights, the light we will need to become stronger in times of darkness. At the beginning of this Hanoukka, let me take you back to a year and a half ago, to the afternoon of May 24th, 2014, a Saturday our country is not likely to forget very soon. It was the eve of the parliamentary elections in our country. A few hours before the last election debate on television was about to start, the news about the shooting at the Jewish Museum here in Brussels came through. A man had shot 4 people and fled the scene afterwards. Pictures from security cameras showed a man that walked into the museum, took a Kalashnikov out of a bag, fired shots and walked out again. Immediately it became clear that this was not an ordinary shooting, but a terrorist attack on a Jewish target. French customs was able to arrest a suspect in Marseille 1 week later. Mehdi Nemouche, a Frenchman of nearly 30 who had returned from Syria. The man was subsequently extradited to our country and charged with murder in a terroristic context. The attack was a shock for our country, not only because 4 people died that day, but also because we faced a terrorist attack that seemed organized on an international level with clearly an ideological slant. At that time, the attack on the Jewish Museum convinced us even more to make the battle against radical and violent extremism and terrorism a top priority for this federal government. This year, we faced effects a few other times as well. I already mentioned the events in Paris, but let's not forget about the attacks that happened in Denmark and Tunisia as well. In our own country, we were able to dismantle a terrorist cell in the town of Verviers, thanks to weeks of meticulous preparation. The question that concerns me every day is, how can we reduce the threat posed by extremists and terrorists to the fullest? And I don't want to be naive about it. We are not going to dismantle the ideological frameworks of Islamic State and similar organizations as easy as that. Their anti-Semitism is impossible to erase at the blink of an eye. Even the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, an international battleground for the past 100 years, is impossible to resolve from this small country. But what we can do, and where I, as a minister, actually can contribute, are 2 large fields of action, namely, 1, maximum efforts will be made in the field of security, even though zero risk is completely impossible. And 2, not a single opportunity will be missed to defend and reassert our own values and standards, the same values and standards we fought for centuries. Let me start with security. Earlier this year, the federal government announced a package of no less than 30 measures who will be put in practice one by one. One of these measures is to adapt legislation to punish terrorism more effectively. All those who went off fighting in Syria or Iraq and returned to our country will irrevocably be put in prison. And people known to us as preachers of hatred or extreme violence are even controlled more tightly than before. Other measures include optimizing the exchange of information between various departments and authorities, as well as the deployment of the army. Since mid-January, soldiers guard sensitive buildings and locations who are under increased threat level, for example, international institutions and embassies, but also the Jewish synagogues and institutions, both in Brussels and in Antwerp. To be able to invest in such structural measures, we allocated €4 million for the security of the Jewish community in September. This amount will now be used for camera surveillance, armored windows and doors, alarm systems, and so on. For those still in doubt, for us it is unacceptable that whole communities feel unsafe and would hesitate to stay in our country for that reason. If we want to win the battle against violent fundamentalism and terrorism, we will have to work together on a European level. We have to devote maximum efforts to exchange of data, and we are making huge leaps forward. On the Council of Ministers of Home Affairs that was held last Friday, we reached an agreement on the PNR records. Based on the PNR data, and PNR means passenger name records, we can drastically restrict the international mobility of criminals. Of course, the physical security of our borders is also a big priority. Together with the people of Frontex, the EU agency responsible for the surveillance of the Schengen borders, I want to look at the possibilities to ensure that criminals do not get any opportunity to walk in and out of our territory unchecked. But, as I mentioned before, security represents only one side of the medal. Apart from repressive measures, we must also work on prevention, say, to ensure that we remove the wick from the ideological power gap. I think it's extremely important that we, even more than we are already doing, promote our democratic values and norms. That needs to form an antidote for the messages spread by the hate preachers. Today, lots of young Muslims only hear one bell, one ideology. We must make efforts to gain access to their bubble. At the end of last year, my fellow colleagues, Ministers of Home Affairs, gave me the task to work out a project on this subject for the whole of Europe. Therefore, we must join hands, all together, over the borders of nations and ideologies. We can't let extremists who mean us and the world harm and to question our fundamental values drive us apart. I refuse to accept this. That is the basic message. That, dear friends, is the basic message that I wish to give you at the beginning of the ceremony. I want to thank all of you for receiving me so warmly here today. You can always count on my willingness to listen to new ideas. I thank you very much.